You mean like poo-poo stuff?
This video is brought to you by Shadowstone Park, only on Cartoon Hangover Select.
Here's a word of advice: stay away from the Watterson family. While their misadventures make for great TV, they regularly get into dangerous and flat-out criminal situations time and time again. Hi, I'm Jacob with Channel Frederator, and today we're checking out 10 things Gumball would get locked up for, assuming he was an adult. And before we get started, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. Let's start out simple with assault and battery. Owing your life is one thing, but serving for life is another. In the episode The Debt, Gumball is hanging out in the street in front of his house. His neighbor, Mr. Robinson, manages to not hit Gumball with his car as he's pulling into his curbside parking spot. While Gumball is more than appreciative for not becoming roadkill, he makes it his goal to save Mr. Robinson's life in order to repay his very one-sided life debt. Of course, with this being a cartoon, the set arrangement goes terribly wrong. Many of the situations in which Gumball attempts to save Mr. Robinson's life are actually setting the stage for a variety of mishaps, with his misguided deeds finally veering into straight-up assault. For instance, while Gumball demonstrates how a Home Alone-esque home defense system works, a dodgeball is directly fired into Mr. Robinson's gut. I mean, it's not a definitely deadly paint bucket to the head, but that's still pretty painful. In regards to how the laws on assault and battery work, the severity of the punishment generally changes depending on whether or not the assault was intentional and whether or not it caused serious harm. In this case, while the harm caused to Mr. Robinson wasn't necessarily deliberate, justice would say that Gumball knew what he was doing when he rang that doorbell. And given all the pain that Mr. Robinson endured from earlier incidents, it may very well have caused some serious harm. For this offense, Gumball would be looking at a year minimum with the potential for more jail time if those injuries were truly severe. Arson. Kids, I know this should go without saying, but if your phone is taken away by superiors, don't dig a deeper hole for yourself and go about lighting it on fire. In the episode The Phone, Gumball gets a new cell phone, which is later confiscated at school and brought into Counselor Small's office. While Gumball attempts to retrieve his phone in a Mission Impossible-like fashion, Mr. Smalls freezes, propels a candle onto the carpet, and then proceeds to pass out. Now, if you've ever sat through a fire safety instructional video, you're probably thinking, man, that carpet is toast. Adding insult to injury, Gumball only makes the fire worse by feeding the flames with a file folder. He then completely shifts his focus towards getting his cell phone out of the office. Thankfully, those ever-shifting cartoon rules allow Gumball and Darwin to put out the fire before it engulfs the whole school. However, in the real world, with real laws, like, for example, the laws of physics, Gumball would be looking at hard time for arson. Arson laws differ for accidental and purposeful fires, and while Gumball's office fire was accidental, it would actually fall into the case of gross negligence. This practically makes the case akin to an intentional fire. The punishment for arson varies wildly depending on the damage done, so hypothetically, if Gumball's fire kept burning, he could be looking at anywhere from 1 to over 20 years in jail. Cell phones are not worth it, friendo. They don't even have headphone jacks anymore. Vandalism. So the crime committed by Gumball and his accomplice Darwin in the apology is totally good-natured, but a crime nonetheless. Miss Simeon spends most of the episode trying to prove to Principal Brown that Gumball and Darwin are bad kids in order to save face. Long story short, Gumball and Darwin decide to help out in the end because in order to help Miss Simeon make her case and prevent her from losing her job, they have to do something incredibly criminal, like spray paint Principal Brown's car. This is straight-up vandalism, and while certain kinds of vandalism are simply charged as a misdemeanor, vandalism that causes property damage is a more severe crime. This could land Gumball a year or more in jail, that is if he hadn't been conveniently saved by the episode's end before having to deal with any consequences. Poisoning. Here's a fun fact: in California, not only is poisoning illegal, as it should be, but informing someone that something is poisoned when it's not can still be punished with jail time. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. In the episode The Dream, Gumball has a nightmare about his love interest Penny choosing Darwin over him. This inspires Gumball to prove that Penny likes him more than his brother. This is done in a typically awkward preteen fashion that reminds me of days I would rather not relive. Part of his plan involves making Penny choose between a blue cupcake, which symbolizes him, and an orange cupcake, which represents Darwin. Before Penny can explain to Gumball that she's allergic to blueberries, Gumball forces her to eat the blueberry-flavored blue cupcake, immediately causing Penny to undergo a severe allergic reaction. As you can imagine, if the mere false threat of poison is a crime, actually poisoning someone can be punished quite severely. While an allergic reaction would likely land Gumball's crime on the less severe end of the spectrum, the punishment for poisoning can be in the range of 2 to 8 years of jail time. Indecent Exposure. Season 3's The Oracle is an entire episode written around Gumball eventually engaging in an act of indecent exposure. A prophetic painting discovered by Gumball and friends in the beginning of the episode shows Gumball naked in the mall, and while most of the episode is about Gumball attempting to prevent this prophecy, like literally all true prophecies, it comes true by the episode's end. You heard it here first, folks. True things are true. Indecent exposure is punishable by a year or 2 in jail, whether or not the moment was predicted by a painting and was all but inevitable. So don't think you can use the painting as an excuse in court. Not that I'm speaking from experience or anything. Setting off a fire alarm. Setting off a fire alarm when there's no emergency is a punishable offense, and while Gumball's only punishment for committing this crime was 3 months detention, the real world isn't so forgiving. In the episode The Society, a series of Gumball's actions land him a one-way ticket to detention. While he's in the principal's office being given his sentence, Gumball flicks a paperclip that knocks Principal Brown out the window. It makes sense in context. And the whole window thing is a crime that we're just gonna ignore for the sake of talking about a more interesting offense, because the paperclips cause a spark in the wall outlet, setting off the school's fire alarm. While a minor spark is a little bit different than pulling a fire alarm, the school was most definitely not in a state of emergency, and Gumball was most definitely the perpetrator of this false alarm. While some false alarm setters are let off with a fine, others can be sentenced up to a year in jail. Underage driving. So the setup for this crime is a little weird, but punishable nonetheless. In the episode The Check, the entire Watterson family receives a check and everyone races each other to the bank to cash it. The weird part? They all get into invisible cars thanks to the magic of plot convenience. But make no mistake, these are still real cars on the road, and for the under 16-year-old Gumball, driving without a driver's license and under the legal driving age is most definitely a crime. Fortunately for our hypothetical real-world criminal version of Gumball, the sentence for underage driving isn't actually too severe. He'd face about 6 months in jail. This is probably because underage driving is a crime that can only be committed by teens and preteens, and no one wants to sentence someone that young to real hard time. You know, unless it led to other worse stuff. Impersonating a doctor. Poor Alan. The happy, popular, well-intentioned balloon guy is time and time again the victim of Gumball's almost always harmful schemes. In The Traitor, Gumball thinks Alan is bailed on a hangout when really Alan and his family wanted to show his mother a good time before a planned surgery. Gumball and Darwin take it upon themselves to perform the surgery needed by his balloon mother, and not being licensed medical professionals commit a major crime in doing so. While impersonation is a crime, a Pennsylvania case in 2015 actually increased the sentence for impersonating a doctor. One such case had occurred before when a couple men imitating doctors had tragic consequences. If Gumball were tried in Pennsylvania for his crime of impersonating a medical professional, he could be facing up to 5 years behind bars. Forging a check. In the season 5 episode The Cycle, the Watterson family hatches a revenge scheme to punish Cloud Dad Harold Wilson for a lifetime of bullying the Watterson dad, Richard. They decide to write a blank check for a ton of money and leave it for Harold to find, making him think he's struck it rich. To be clear about the logistics of the crime, Richard is the one who actually forges the check, while Gumball is merely the one that hatches the plan. However, in some cases, conspiracy to commit a crime can lead the conspirator to an equivalent sentence, and given that Richard was acting purely under Gumball's guidance, this is a classic case of criminal conspiracy. So how much jail time do you get for forging a check? For check fraud, Gumball could face up to 30 years. Believe it or not, this well-intentioned prank is actually one of Gumball's most punishable offenses. Well, other than attempted assassination. And also assassination. Seriously guys, poor Alan. He doesn't deserve the treatment he gets from Gumball, especially not in the episode The Vision. Half the episode is about Gumball and his oftentimes criminal accomplice Darwin trying to pop the lovable balloon guy. Sure enough, at the end of the episode, they actually do. They kill him. Seriously, murder. Okay, so Alan probably came back from being popped because he's been popped a number of times throughout the series, but the way it's treated in the episode, it makes it seem like this is a for real assassination. Attempted assassination, even if the perpetrator doesn't succeed, is still a serious crime. For just this, Gumball could be given a life sentence with the chance of 10 years in prison before being offered parole. For actually popping Alan and ending his life, Gumball could face a life sentence with a minimum of 25 25 years before a chance at parole. Good riddance, hypothetical real-life Gumball. Turns out the streets are way safer without you. And there you have it. I'm Jacob, and thanks for watching 10 things Gumball would get locked up for. Which do you think is the worst? Did we miss any? Comment below and let us know. And don't forget to click the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. We've got videos dropping every day, so make sure to subscribe because remember, Frederator loves you.